Hey folks, Derek Marin here, your host for the MSP Lead Gen podcast. And this is our fourth episode, and we're switching gears a little bit. Here, we're bringing in an outside expert to talk about engineering the sales process for MSPs. This is Robert Gillete. He now has a company where he coaches MSPs on this, and so I thought it was a good interview. I hope you guys get value from it. And of course, if you have suggestions, comments, questions, feel free to reach out. You can reach me at derek@simpleselling.co. Appreciate you. Thanks so much. And until next time, bye. So, Rob, appreciate so much your time coming in to chat with me today, or coming into the office, the good old oficina.
Yeah, this was the easy part.
Podcast studio. Well, folks, we have Rob Gillete here, president of Reclaiming Sales, and today we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to his heart, especially, but it's becoming more and more dear to mine. But Rob, please first introduce yourself to the group. My huge audience here.
Hey man, any audience is a great audience for me.
That's true.
I'm the owner of Reclaiming Sales. It's a consultancy where I work with businesses, mostly IT support companies, to figure out their revenue problems, because most of them, obviously revenue covers a multitude of sins. So most businesses that are trying to get from A to B, they have to solve the revenue problem. It's typically for larger MSPs, but I work with some smaller MSPs as well. And I'm really just trying to help them figure out, how do they either as an owner become the salesperson they want to be, or maybe don't want to be but need to be. And then if for the right MSP, I can help them scale up to an entire sales team so they can get out of sales altogether. I also run something called the MSP Dojo, where whoever has to go take that first time appointment with a prospect, statistics tell us that it's the best salesperson that wins, not the best company. So I help those salespeople get together once a week and practice the sales process, so they're never practicing on a prospect.
That is awesome. I'm a big sports guy, and I just can't imagine having playing in games without practice. So it's it makes perfect sense that you have something like that to give these folks opportunity to mess up, screw up, different scenarios that you might walk into. Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess it'd be great to hear just how you got into this in the first place. How did you get into working with, MSPs and get into helping them with sales? Just that background first, I think would be great.
Yeah, I'll go as quick as I can through my convoluted journey, but I'm a third generation sales guy. Grandpa did it, dad did it. I never wanted to do sales. So I ran from it. I started businesses and was a project manager and owned a retail store and was a photographer. And then in my 30s, when I was staring down the barrel of my first child, well, I guess staring down the barrels are wrong. He wasn't born yet, but I was thinking about, man, I got a kid coming. I need some consistent income, and I got to start saving for college and these kinds of things. I can't be as flippy-floppy as I was beforehand. I ended up taking a sales job in an MSP. I tried to apply for an IT job, and I wasn't qualified, although I thought I was. And the owner convinced me to take a chance on sales. And, after 6 months, I really realized this is my calling. This is what I've been searching for my whole life. It's just different than I thought it was, because it hadn't been framed to me correctly. And we all think of the car salesman when we think of sales, and we know these bright narcissistic spots that we want to avoid, but they outshine the normal people we would be happy to be like that are successful in sales. And so I sold MSP services for about 7 years. I, sold a bunch, probably sold enough to spin up a couple MSPs. And then I realized that, I needed to move on because I was never going to be an owner where I was. And so I started my consultancy teaching other people about the process I'd been through, my own journey of making amends with that transition, and that sales might be my highest and best calling. The way I can give the most value to the most people through that function. And I help people with that journey now, either as individuals or as a team. And that's also why I started Reclaiming Sales. My big, hairy, audacious goal is that, before I die, if I could create a world where my grandson can go to college and get a degree, like a bachelor's in sales, and that's just super normal, That would be an amazing contribution to the world, because 9% of the people in the United States are in a sales job. But Daniel Pink, who wrote a book called To Sell is Human, I believe, his book says that 90% of us spend at least 3 hours of our day doing the same thing a sales guy would. We just don't think of it as sales, but we're trying to influence other people's behavior or opinions, and that's kind of sales. So it's this, mission critical core function of our world that we just seem to think is gross and hate, and it causes a lot of what I call pollution. It just causes a lot of pollution in the environment. It makes us unhappy to be where we live because we don't know how to address it.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. No, I'm totally resonating with that last thing you mentioned about us always being in sales with a 90%. But I got 3 little boys, and I feel like I'm constantly trying to persuade them to do one thing, or they're trying to,
Yeah.
and they're doing a much better job at getting me to do what they want. So, boy, we've been learning
Yeah.
sales since day one.
I mean,
Almost.
the crazy thing is the
Um,
same stuff, the same skill set I use to convince someone to sign $1 million contract, like, is the same, like, that skill set I'm literally using with my 4-year-old to get her to eat her broccoli. It's just like the same tools, man, deployed in a different context.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're all in sales. I'm 100% with you, 110%. All right. So let's dive in. So these folks are here because they want to hear the 5 reasons or the 5 mistakes or the 5 things that MSP's got to do a little better to get what they want.
Yeah.
Some more MRR. So where do
Yeah.
we begin with this, Rob? Where do we begin? You,
Yeah.
you, you lead the way here.
So the first, there's 5 of them, and there's probably more than 5, but the 5 I've chosen to talk about today
Today.
are it's kind of part of the Lean Six Sigma management methodology: plan, do, check, act. That's the first 4 steps. And Americans were really bad at this, generally speaking. Like, we love making plans, we love doing plans. We skip the check and the act. So just from a very high level, the first thing we have to do is we got to make an actual plan. Don't just like go, I need more sales, and just throw yourself at whatever you've done in the past. Come up with a plan. Sit down for a little bit and actually write it out. Not just your prospecting plan, but your whole sales methodology. Write it out so you could explain it to a stranger. So that if you called me up and said, hey, Robert, I need help with my sales, and I said, okay, what's your strategy? You could explain to me in 30 seconds or so, like, what is your sales methodology? What tools do you use? What are the steps? What are your beliefs? Are you a Sandler guy? Are you a challenger sale guy? Spin? Understand the plan and then write it out so that you don't get confused when you're tired. Because when we're tired and we're busy and stuff comes up, it's really hard to do the plan if it's more of like a guideline. If it's more like, I'm going to work on sales this week. You have to have a plan. What are you going to do, when, and how? I guess that'd be the first step. The next part is go do the plan. Again, Americans, great at this. Activators, push, let's go. This is one of my core strengths, is the activator. I'm the kind of guy that, like, if I know what restaurant I'm going to, I'm going to get in the car, start driving, and then look up directions. I want to just go. And that's very normal, and you should leverage that when you have the strength and the power and the motivation to do that. But you have to make sure you're actually doing the plan. Like, don't just do stuff. Do the plan. Be disciplined about it. Try and actually do what you say you're going to do, which it sounds like I'm an easy thing, but it's really not. Right. Shiny object syndrome is normal. When you start doing the plan, you realize how hard this is. And you don't pick up as much speed as you want and whatever. So, like, doing the plan is more about discipline than anything else. Saying, like, I'm going to be disciplined to do what I said I'm going to do the way I was going to do it, so that I could see if the plan works. Because that's what's most mission critical. People start pushing and then they go, oh, this isn't working, and they change the plan. And that's a bad idea. Come up with a plan, then do the plan. Not just stuff, but the plan. And then once you've done the plan the way you said you were going to do it, then you need to check the plan. You need to, like a little scientist, go, okay, I said this was my hypothesis. This was the experiment I was going to run. I ran that experiment. What data did I collect? I see this all the time with, like, outbound sequences. People go, man, I created this 9-step outbound sequence. I plugged 1,000 people into it. And somewhere around step 3, people are, I'm not getting the results I want. And so they stop the sequence, they abandon it, they change it, they try again. Do the plan, then check the plan. Did it go as we planned? Did you get the results you were looking for? And spend the time to review the outcome to see if, like, maybe it didn't get what you wanted, but maybe it was good enough. Maybe 80% of the way, sometimes 100% of what you needed, so not 100% of what you wanted, but 100% of what you needed. So sit down and go, like, just make sure, did I even do the plan? Let's check it. Check the plan against the activity to see it works. And then what I call recommit or regroup. So if the plan worked, do it harder, better, faster, stronger. If the plan did not work, then change something. The regroup part of it, the change something, most people, again, screw up because they change everything. And we go, well, that didn't work, so let's come up with something else. And while sometimes that's the case, oftentimes, and more often, it's that you lost, like, the plan broke down at a certain point. Being able to identify what that point was, and then being able to change that 5 or 10% to adjust the outcome and run it again is where most people lose the iterative process, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to have a better wheel, and then a slightly better wheel, a slightly better wheel, and a slightly better wheel. Instead of going, well, wheels don't work, let's make squares. Let's try squares for a bit, maybe octagons. Like, make a small adjustment to the plan and try it again. So by its very nature, these plans, the plan, do, check, act cycle, needs to be small. It can't be a big sweeping quarter-long process. It should be like a couple weeks or a week. Come up with a plan, try the plan. How did it go? Can we iterate on this and make it a little bit better? This is not a new concept, but for some reason we don't like applying it to sales. We want to run full speed ahead towards prospects, and then, like, something works once, and then we built an entire strategy off of it, and then realized that was a one-off. And now we've wasted a bunch of time and money. So plan, do, check, act, super important. Yeah. And then the fifth one, which obviously I think is important, is that practice is like the fairy dust of sales. You can take anything you're doing and sprinkle a little practice over it, and it gets better. It's just, I can maybe culinarily, it's the bacon of sales. Like, you just put bacon on it and it gets better. That's just how it's just generally. If you're a vegan, I'm sorry, I apologize, but it is. So,
well, I
basically, there's a great book by Angela Duckworth. It's called Grit, and it's about, like, how do you identify the one characteristic that every successful salesperson seems to have, and it's grit. It's a scientific thing she's figured out. I'm not a scientist, but she figured out it's grit. And one of the key tenets is that talent counts, but hard work counts twice. And so there's something about just putting in practice to whatever it is you're doing, especially in sales, that it just levers it up so much. Nothing can beat just putting in the repetitions.
Hey everyone, so before we continue with the episode, I did want to take a quick break just to introduce us better. So if it wasn't clear already, Simple Selling specializes in managed business development and marketing for MSPs. And one of the main reasons that MSPs choose us is because we bring two processes together better than anyone else. And here's what I mean. The business development part, the outbound, that's the first impression, right, that we make on prospects about your MSP. And we call it the lead capture moment. And the second process, the marketing process, that's to make a long-term good and unforgettable impression on your prospects. We call that the demand generation process. Because we do both, the outbound lead capture and the demand generation, and we integrate them in one system, your CRM, MSPs are really differentiating. They're really getting the results. And the other benefit is that MSPs can spend less time having to work with multiple vendors in sales and marketing, and they can focus more on running their MSP and taking care of customers and cybersecurity and all the other things that you guys have going on. And so if you're looking for help with this, definitely reach out to me, and we can schedule some time to get to know each other. Anyway, thanks so much for listening to the podcast, and I'll let you get back to the show.
It makes people more comfortable. It breeds confidence. It creates activity. And then I say it like hijacks the hypothalamus, which the hypothalamus, for anyone that doesn't know, is the part of your brain that controls fight or flight. And this is a big deal because like, what's the most dangerous thing you do, Derek? Like in real life?
I mean, the most danger probably. I guess I drive a fair amount.
Statistically,
I mean,
it's you
technically,
drive a car and you go
statistically, I
downstairs.
guess
Like, yeah,
that's
you
where
drive a
life
car,
is.
you go
Yeah,
downstairs and
one
you eat
second, right?
sugar. That's probably like statistically that, but like your brain doesn't think any of those things are dangerous because you do them all the time, and
Right.
it's hard to sense the danger. Like our lizard
Exactly.
brain did not develop with the ability to judge G forces and speed and apply it to our hypothalamus. It just doesn't. So oddly enough, for most people, sitting in a sales meeting is the most life-threatening thing you experience. At least as far as your brain is concerned, because that same,
Yeah.
Biological system that would allow you to respond to a bear attacking your house or the next village over coming to burn down your village, like that still exists in you. You just don't use it. And because it's there, it's not trained very well. And so you'll be in a meeting and it represents maybe your livelihood or your ability to make payroll or your ability to retire someday. And people say no to you, or they ask tough questions or give objections. If you're noticing you're getting a little warm, getting a little antsy, you can't focus your thoughts, that is the system that protects you from the village raiders kicking in a life-threatening scenario because you don't train it to do anything else. And that can be really hard to hijack and get any kind of control of because it's completely involuntary, but practice seems to shut it down. It makes it normal, just like driving.
Yeah.
The first time you drove a car, you were terrified.
Sure.
But now you drive and you don't even think about it. You zone out while you're driving. You drive like 3 or 4 miles and then remember you're driving, right? Hopefully not very often, but that happens to all of us. So if you can practice your sales enough that it becomes normal, you're not going to have those same things. The challenge is most MSPs, I think 85% of them have fewer than 10 meetings a year. Like, how can you do that if you're just like once a month popping into a prospect? There's nothing normal about that. It's a big deal. So practice allows you to rob the fear and the power from that FTA or that meeting because you've made it normal. So, man, I'm sorry. I just like talked for 15 minutes and I'm not sure if I even breathed. So I'll let you. Yeah.
No, man, this is great. So let me try to squeeze in a few
good
questions
luck,
here.
man.
I know, right? We might get one question out for another episode. The plan part, right? That's where you started. Like, can you kind of, walk me through as you've met and worked with MSPs, kind of what is the part of the plan that that gets the most, kind of like aha moments, or and also second part of that, like what is like the high level, like, table of contents, would you say, for the plan, if you will? Like, what are the sections that you guys kind of look at, or that you suggest they plan out?
That's a really complex question, and it's tough because I don't know who's going to see this. But what I would encourage people to do is you have to start with what works. So if you're a company that has built your entire process off of referrals, you probably can't grow your business to what you want just on referrals, but you need to find a way to maximize the amount of referrals you're getting and the close ratio. So that's first step one. A lot of people that call me, they're like, God, I just lost a client that's 20% of my revenue. Like, okay, well, now's not the time to hire a marketing company. I'm sorry. You got to like lean in fast to what has worked. But when you're thinking about how you're going to grow your MSP by 5-fold in the next 5 years, you can't do what you've been doing. You need to add something to it. So the first part of the plan is if something works, do it more. But then you have to add a whole new thing to it. And that's where a lot of the time marketing or outbound appointment setting, SEO, whatever the strategy is that you're comfortable investing in, you have to pick one and vet it and come up with a plan and run it for as long as that person says you need to run it and give them money to do it. But you have to make sure you adjust to accommodate that new thing. So all the time I talk to people that
Mm.
have built their entire business off of referrals, and then they hire a marketer, and then they fire that marketer 6 months later because they're not getting any business. And I'm like,
Oh man, I have
I'm
a
like,
story for
okay,
you. Yeah.
congratulations. I'll be like, what's your close ratio on referrals? I'm like 90%. Like, what's your close ratio on your marketing? They're like, well, we didn't sell a single one. And I go, cool, congratulations. You can eat a fully cooked steak. Nice. I'm very proud of you. And then someone handed you a cow and you didn't know what to do with it. And like that, I understand that. That's not abnormal, but it's not their fault. You're used to
Right.
someone doing the hard work of building trust, running a great process. Somebody walked you in the door and said, you should buy. And then they said, okay. And that's great. You should close 90% of those and it should help you make lots of money. But if like there's a certain point where that's not enough, and it's time to engage
Mm.
a marketer or an appointment setter, you have to adjust your sales plan to accommodate that new perspective of the buyer. And it's not the marketer's
Mm.
fault you're not closing those appointments. It's that your sales process is accommodated to eating fully cooked steaks, not preparing the meat for cooking. Does that make sense? Or did I get
Mm.
lost in my
That's a great.
metaphors?
Oh, that's a great
Okay.
analogy. Yeah, or the metaphor. Yeah, I'm gonna use that one because yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I said I would share a story. Like I was speaking recently to an MSP president, like roughly 25 person, based in, doesn't matter where they're based, in the United States. And they had just parted ways with like a competitor
Mm-hmm.
of ours who does like lead generation. It doesn't matter who they were, but they had done 18 months with this firm. The firm had generated around 45-ish appointments, 45 because I remember
Yeah.
it because I just met with them like last week. And they told me that they had only actually met with around half of those. So there was a huge problem with like ghosting, which is a separate
Mm-hmm.
issue. Definitely interesting. Not a good thing, of course, and that firm is at fault. But for the other 20 something appointments, what happened? And nothing, no customers. And so, I think, what you're talking about, I think, they're coming from referral based, great MSP, but now they suddenly get all these leads you know, and they share the questions that they were using in the FTA in the first appointment. And boy, it's just like you can see the inexperience there in
Yeah.
that. So it hits home.
Yeah,
Hits home.
absolutely. And this is where the plan makes like this is incredibly like you could like, oh, plan, do, check, act. Yeah, that makes sense. Totally. Awesome. No problem. But this is a real investment of time and energy. I tell people all the time what people really want, what MSPs really want is more leads. I just need more better leads. Like, yeah, that's probably true. That's the ice cream cone you want to buy. I get that. Okay. But the vegetables you also need to eat, your strong food is that you probably suck at sales just a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit, especially when it
Yeah.
comes to those cold
Yeah.
leads. And so, sales and marketing,
Mm.
getting more leads, but knowing how to close them, that's like two sides of the same coin that you're hoping to spend or gather or whatever metaphor you want to use here. And so you have to absolutely have a good plan, not only on how you're going to generate those leads, how you're going to get those opportunities, but how are you going to treat them differently than someone who was referred by their accountant, who they trust, who's done all the hard work of
Mm.
building that credibility. Because that's essentially what you're, as an MSP, that's what you're asking to do. You're saying, hey, that guy who made all these promises and then apparently lied to you because you're firing him, I can make all those same promises. Like, it's not very
Mm.
helpful. You have to have something more than that.
Right.
If you're going to
Yeah.
be closing a cold lead or a marketing generated lead. It's not just good enough to be, hey, look at me, look at my tie, look at my company. I have great branding. Money, please. It just doesn't work that way.
Yep. 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 No, absolutely. No, it takes a little bit more than that. So, um, well, Rob, I mean, I think we're getting close here to the time. Is there anything else that you wanted to add in either any one of these sections or tips
Oh
that you
God, I
talked about? I
probably
mean, it was a
went on
lot.
my own
It was a lot.
dissertation long enough. But I would just say that most people wait too long. To spend up a
Mm.
good to spin up a good sales engine. It's a little bit like going to the doctor. if you will, or maybe losing weight's probably a better one. I'm trying to lose some weight right now. By the time you realize you're very overweight, you are very overweight and you have lots of bad habits and you have to like pick up a lot of ground. And at the beginning, it's not very like rapid. Like it's a long journey back to healthy if you are unhealthy. And so I cannot tell you how many people call me, and it's so expensive to fix their revenue problem because they didn't start early. They waited until it was a big problem. And now it's a big problem. If you're hiring a marketing company, if you're trying to figure out your revenue problem, I hate the word problem, but like if you're not happy with your revenue, you have to start somewhere, and you should start long before you should. So if you're anywhere within the sound of my voice, I know this is a self-serving comment, but you got to hire someone to fix this for you, or at least advise you in this direction, whether it's Derek or me or somebody. But you just can't build a business unless you're focusing on revenue, and it has to be new client revenue. You cannot achieve your multiple exit or your lifestyle profitable business that doesn't worry about revenue off of just growing current clients. You have to find a way to reliably bring new clients, take strangers that don't give you money and convince them to give you money. You have to have a reliable process for that, or you are like a ship at sea, and one wayward wave can knock the whole thing down and cause a lot of problems if you haven't figured out this part of your business. And you need to start before the economy gets bad. You need to start before that big client leaves. You need to start before that salesperson, quits, or you hire that salesperson. This is a process that takes time to do correctly. Start before you need it.
Absolutely. No, that's great advice. Well, Rob, this has been awesome. Thanks so much, man, for taking the time.
Thank you. You're a good man.
Maybe we'll have you back to
maybe
dive
I'll
in,
let you ask more than one
get
question.
a second
That'd
question
be
in there. Yeah, no, this is great, Rob.
Right,
Thanks so
bye-bye.
much. We'll talk to you next time. See ya.